The government is cutting a lot. Elon, DOGE, those guys. It's sometimes hard to keep up or to properly evaluate the worth of every program or the value of every slash. One easy heuristic is Elon's a maniac, I'm against it. But I do try to evaluate the cuts on more of a case-by-case basis rather than a Musk-by-Musk basis, because Musk by Musk tends to lead you into thinking about a guy who names his kid, one of his 14 kids, Techno Mechanicus, more than the value and efficiency of the individual program. So program by program, and there are a lot of programs. You know about USAID and the Department of Education. I hope now the Yale program that tracked kidnapped Ukrainian children. I talked about it. The grants cut from Columbia University include research into increasing screenings for colorectal cancer. Now, I happen to be against colorectal cancer, but, and here's a caveat, if colorectal cancer is detected early, that's better than detected late. So that grant, given my prior, seems like a good thing. It also seems largely independent of the excesses of anti-Zionists on the lawn. Also being cut, the Cyber Safety Review Board, as in these guys.
In a new report by the board, it called the breach of officials at the state and commerce departments preventable, slamming the tech giant for its cybersecurity lapses and a deliberate lack of transparency.
I appreciate the research. Right now they're currently looking into a extremely complex penetration into U.S. networks by the Chinese. I guess we're going to have to get their research from somewhere else. Good luck. Oh, they're also eliminating the Voice of America. Now, is this a good thing? Guess who thinks so? The Chinese. The Global Times, which is the tabloid version of the Chinese Communist Party's flagship newspaper, The People's Daily, writes under the headline, "Why VOA, known as a lie factory, has halted operations." By the way, if you read the story, you think, oh, that's why they halted, because it's a lie factory. No, that's not what the People's Daily is arguing. They are arguing, quote, known for stirring up conflicts, inciting social divisions, and even participating in regime change efforts, VOA is widely recognized as Washington's carefully crafted propaganda machine for peaceful evolution, earning itself a notorious reputation on the global stage. Stop. Okay, whatever its reputation on the global stage is asserted by the Chinese, it should have a fantastic reputation on the domestic stage if it can achieve peaceful evolution. See, the thing is, I don't think it's as good as the Chinese are saying it is. They continue. Similar to Radio Free Asia and Radio Free Europe / Radio Liberty, its primary function is to serve Washington's need to attack other countries based on ideological demands, and they conclude the so-called beacon of freedom, VOA, has now been discarded by its own government like a dirty rag. All right, so the Chinese have weighed in. They're in favor. Also eliminated, the Pentagon's Office of Net Assessment, which has been called the office that won the Cold War. There was a time when we were rooting for the Americans in that particular war. Now I'm not so sure. So most of these programs seem pretty good on paper. The 1 or 2 line description or slogan like "won the Cold War" would tend to make you miss them. But here's the thing. There really could well be a whole lot of waste, pointlessness, redundancy, inefficiency, and even initiatives which run counter to American interests as you, the voter, define them. How are we to know? How are we to individually evaluate how efficient these programs were? How much we could get the same bang for fewer bucks? How much they're really worth it after you get past the top line description? It doesn't surprise me that if you describe these things by a phrase, that phrase sounds good. They were put into effect because the phrase sounded good, or were at least founded and funded by someone who understood that you have to justify the thing to some extent, right? This is why there's nothing named the Department of Ripping Us Off or the Government Office of Frustrating You. That would be goofy. When Anthony Weiner was on Not Even Mad, he said he was against the very nicely named Institute of Peace.
Yeah, I just read that they want to close down the Institute of Peace. When I was in Congress, I worked with Republicans to try to close that place down, too.
Who's not for peace? Well, Anthony Weiner explained his thinking. Shouldn't the State Department be the Institute for Peace? Yeah, I guess. It's unclear what, if anything, or how much more or less peaceful the U.S. and the world would be without the Institute for Peace. I don't know. I know it's getting cut. All we really have to go on is our conception of what the agencies do, often based on a paraphrase, or if we're lucky enough to read publications with enough resources to provide coverage, an article or full story detailing the functions of the agency or program. Maybe if the article is really good, they'll get into some criticisms of the programs being cut. And somehow, if we're super lucky, we'll have some way to discern what are the legitimate criticisms and what are illegitimate. I don't know how we're supposed to do that. I don't know how we're supposed to invest all this time, especially as we're trying to keep up with all these things getting cut. So what we do is we default to a general narrative about the cuts and about Musk. But if we like Musk, if we think he seems like a cool dude with his memes and his chainsaw, then we like the cuts. If he seems kind of, what's the word? Extreme. Here's another word, silly, with his black on black hats and his chainsaw, we might disagree with the guy. And then we, as the news-consuming, discerning public and citizenry, fall back on our initial impressions and maybe whatever new anecdotes or pieces of information flit across our consciousness, but mostly it's our initial impressions. Not that anyone can really turn our distaste or support for the cuts into anything like a vote at this point. So really, the only important official and non-subjective thing going on around this is, well, in the short term, the cuts are going into effect, so there's less government right now and maybe for the next few months. But the only official thing, and I think the only thing that will last, are not the stories or not our impressions or not what we think of Elon. It's the rule of law, the formalities of the institutions that say these can proceed and these can't. And we are seeing the courts working slowly but well. And the administration on this specific question of cuts is more or less adhering to court orders. You could argue less. I know some will want to, but they are not objecting to or flat out defying court orders. They're doing so imperfectly, as you would expect from government by chainsaw. So we've got this really interesting, hard to understand phenomenon, and it's going on, flying all around us, and it's chaos and uncertainty and headlines and upheaval. But also we have the assertion of institution-based order. And I'm not saying everything will go back to normal or even that there will be a Department of Education in the year 2027. I am saying, for all the Hegelian thesis and antithesis, what lasts and what counts as real so far has been the institutions, the legal institutions. Let's say some of these programs do deserve to go. It seems that will happen by an actual process. Either the executive acting within its powers as defined by the courts, and that's happened in some cases. Some of the cuts, the courts have said, yeah, the executive could do that. Some of the cuts, they're saying, yeah, Congress is going to have to do that, like with the Department of Education. And maybe Congress will get it together to do that, or won't. I am open to the idea that some of the slashing is warranted. I am convinced by the argument, much of the argument, that there's a lot of slashing that's not warranted, certainly not this much and not this quickly. But how do we know what's the right amount? We don't. We never will. But also remember, that's not really the purpose of government, to get everything right. The purpose is more along the lines of to express the will of the people through the rule of law. That more or less seems to be mostly happening by hook or crook, slash or burn, chainsaw or suture.